Welcome to Lyme Time. I'm Allie from the Tick Chicks. We are all more than Lyme disease and chronic illness, and together we stand with you to overcome and rise. I'll bring you closer to the experts in cutting-edge treatments and even a few unexpected ways of healing. I'll ask the questions you want answers to regarding Lyme disease and successful ways of getting you closer to 100%. We are in this together and will not be defined by Lyme. Today on Lyme Time, I am thrilled to introduce you to Amy Kurtz. And Amy is a patient advocate, health coach, and author of the book Kicking Sick, one of my new favorites. I can't wait to talk about it. And that is her best-selling guide to thriving with chronic health conditions. Struggling through her teens and 20s with autoimmune and a myriad of mystery illnesses, Amy's long journey taught her to take healing into her own hands. After the success of Kicking Sick, Amy found herself in the familiar territory of the daily pain, and she was recently diagnosed with late-stage Lyme disease, which finally provided context to her debilitating symptoms that she had for so long. A distinct voice in the health space, Amy's work has been heralded by Mark Hyman, one of my favorites, Will Cole, another one, Deepak Chopra, another one, and Kris Carr. Lena Dunham named Kicking Sick her top 10 desert island books of all time. What more do you need than that? And she has appeared on Good Morning America several times, as well as Fox. As a health coach, Amy supports women of all ages and helps them live well regardless of their medical diagnosis. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my goodness, where to begin? We talked a little bit about our own similar health journeys, and I think everybody should get this book because I have it highlighted, I have Post-it notes everywhere. I just really related. It was written in a very easy format. You intertwine experts in there and their own personal bits of advice, their own columns, and in many different fields of health. And so I kind of look at this as a wellness resource book, if you will, something you can turn to many, many times during your journey and get some great information. So let's start with first things first, which is, tell us about your own personal journey and how this book came to be.
Well, when I was 14, I started to have pretty debilitating back pain, and it came out of nowhere and it was really intense. And as you can imagine, being a 14-year-old girl is challenging enough. So add really intense pain to it was something that just came out of nowhere and that unfortunately I didn't really get any answers to. I come from a very Western minded background and I went to the best specialists at the time, but there were no clear answers to what the root cause of the pain was. And so I managed it the best that I could with the information that I had. And looking back, I certainly now at this point in my life can see that things were just harder for me than most people my age. Like if I went out partying with my friends in college, it just took me so much longer to get to feel better again, or I got mono and it just wiped me out way more than normal people our age. And I didn't put two and two together until at 25, I went on a trip abroad and I got very, very sick very quickly. I later found out I got a parasite infection, but I gained 30 pounds in 30 days. I couldn't keep food down. I couldn't go to the bathroom. My hair was falling out. I was like, it was so hard for me to even take a deep breath. And it was as scary and dramatic as it sounds. It was really intense. Now I know that that was sort of like the strike three for my body. But at the time, it was frightening. And I went home and I had to move home with my parents at 25. And I was fighting for my life, and I went to all of the quote unquote best people to see at that time. But again, I had no real answers, and I was in such a state of desperation to hang on to this like life vest in the middle of the water, is how it felt, that I realized I had to take my health into my own hands. And for me, that meant looking at medicine and healing very differently than how I was raised. So I went from all the way west to all the way east and landed somewhere in the middle. I tried everything. I was throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what would stick. And for me, integrative medicine really, really helped me. I was diagnosed with hypothyroid. I cured the parasite infection that I picked up abroad, which I think was really the tipping point of all of this. And I did 8 million things, which I'm sure you totally resonate with, to make myself feel as good as possible with the hand that I had been dealt. But I, so I just learned everything I could, and I went to the best people, and I learned how to meditate, and I learned how to eat well, and I learned to do all of the things that could help myself feel well enough. And in the midst of that, I couldn't find any resources for people like me or like you that had an uplifting voice. I was so desperate in such a lonely and isolating time in my life, when most people are post college finding themselves. It's such an important age for self development, and for me it became singularly focused on my health. But I couldn't find anything out there that wasn't depressing or making it seem as though in some ways it's a life sentence. And I was just unwilling to accept that. I actually read Kris Carr's book, and a light went off inside of the darkest moment in my life. And I was like, wait, there's so many things that people can do. And I can't be the only person feeling this way with chronic invisible illness. And so I looked it up, and I saw that 1 in 2 people in our country were struggling with chronic disease. And this was at a time where like people were not talking about it. Nobody was talking about not feeling well. And we're in a culture that doesn't necessarily look at that as seriously as we do now. But I had this idea that came out of a dream to write Kicking Sick, and I wanted it to be what you said, a resource guide. It was a love letter from my heart to the millions of people struggling, mostly in silence, about living a life where they don't feel optimally and they don't know what to do about it. And it took me an incredible amount of time and resource and to find the people that I thought were actually helpful. So I wanted to create a book where the best of the best that helped me could be in one place for someone. But the goal of Kicking Sick was truly to show women specifically that you can thrive through a difficult health experience and not be sidelined by it and not be defined by it. And it was really important to me that I shine light on all of the things that had helped me in order to help other people. So that's what Kicking Sick is. And here we are.
I love it. I love it. And an important piece that I really want people to understand is something that also happened with me. There's this timeline, and you're going through it from beginning to end. And somewhere in the middle, you get a Lyme diagnosis. And I think that you were implementing all of your health tools along the way. And then you found out later that you actually had Lyme disease. And were you misdiagnosed? That whole time, were you thinking it was maybe another type of chronic illness, or was it undefined until a little later?
I really didn't know. I really really felt at a certain point that I'm managing the best that I can, and my life is so much better now than it had been. So now, in retrospect, looking back, I was treading water, and I wrote this beautiful book from my heart for other people. And the way that the diagnosis came about is I really, beyond my wildest dreams, kicking sick happened, and I had amazing opportunities with Robin Roberts on GMA and other people, and I just wanted to rise to that moment to be an advocate for other people. And to be totally honest, I've never actually talked about this before. um, I would go home and I would feel so tired and so exhausted and feel like I don't know how I'm going to get enough energy to meet this moment. And it just lasted throughout the press period. And afterwards, I felt like I really energetically crashed. And I really had a come to moment where I said, I know that this is not right. And I can't ignore my instincts anymore. And it's so painful. I've been to 37 doctors, and to muster up the strength to say, like, hey, I have to switch courses here. I have to figure this out. I have to do it again. I have to believe in myself enough and my intuition to do it all again, which isn't just meeting a doctor. For people like you or me, or anybody probably listening to this, it's bringing textbooks full of medical records and potentially feeling gaslit or invalidated by your experience, or feeling like somebody just can't help you. And it takes a lot of emotional and mental strength to go back to another doctor and to really just give it another shot. But I did, and I'm so happy that I did, because what came out of it was my doctor saying, okay, I ran all the tests, we did everything again, and it's very, very clear to me that you have late stage neurological Lyme disease and 2 co-infections. And when he said it, it was like I had chills from my ears to my toes. I knew it was true. I knew that I had trusted my intuition, which is what got me there in the first place. This like inner resilience and strength to not let myself live a half life. And it was a really powerful moment, and also a huge moment of grief, because so much of my life had been spent chasing and trying to find out what could help me. And just having the correct diagnosis after so many years of misdiagnosis was very, it just brought up all the feels,
I
as
mean,
I'm sure you know.
it's bringing up all the feels for me right now. I have to be honest, because I think as Lyme warriors, we can all relate to that moment where we found definitively what was going on. And also, of course, you find a little bit of relief in knowing, okay, I can now put a name to it. But you also feel so much anger. I felt this is why I came up with the Tick Chicks and founded it, because I was so angry that here I am, I live in Los Angeles. I was one of the privileged ones that had the resources to go to the best of the best at Cedars, at UCLA. I mean, you name it. I even went to the best of the cancer doctors, because that's where I ended up, because nobody could know what was going on with me. Best neurologists, and yet nobody could do a simple Lyme disease test. Nobody even suggested it. They never asked where I had traveled before that. And I'm just given like some anti-seizure medication. I mean, so so I can really relate to that, and I'm sure that everybody else can. And it almost brings tears to my eyes just even thinking back on that moment. You are filled with hope, and yet there's a whole mountain ahead of you.
Yeah,
So I am
totally.
I'm glad that you continued on your journey, and um you didn't compromise with just thinking you had, like, in other words, once you wrote the book and you had really felt so much better, and yet there was some voice inside your head saying, this is not done. This journey isn't yet complete. And now, because you do have the full diagnosis, you can talk to our community just so specifically. So the book, I, you know, what's interesting about it is that it really does appeal to everybody with chronic illness, not just Lyme disease. So you didn't necessarily have to have the lens of Lyme disease in the first place in writing this book to let it be a resource book or a resource guide for all. I want to talk a little bit about, well, basically your action plan, because I'm sure you and I were often asked, tell me in a paragraph what you did to get better. And it's never the case. It's never the case. We all have um, turns and detours and ups and downs along the way. So I just want to kind of go over briefly, if you can just tell us a little bit about the 12 steps in your action plan. We were going to start out with number 1, and I think they kind of go in chronological order, but it's reminding yourself of your true identity. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I feel that when you're dealing with a health crisis, especially in a system that isn't necessarily prepared to handle the level of chronic disease, or get to the root cause of it, it is so easy to be completely consumed by getting better. And the situation demands that you meet it there. There's no other option. But one of the most important things for me and for my health coaching clients is who are you outside of this health crisis? Who were you before this happened? Like a lot of people do inner child work and stuff like that. But for me, it's really reminding myself what makes me me, and what makes you you, and what do you love to do, and what makes you happy outside of all of this. And how can you every single day try to bring yourself back to honoring that person as much as you can?
That's beautiful. It's beautiful, and it's really true. And we are all sidetracked with killing the bug, and it may or may not ever happen. You will probably reach remission if you actually follow the steps that she's going to be talking about. But being true to yourself is number 1, and really tuning into that. The next one you say is set yourself up for success.
Yeah, I just want to look at one thing so I'm not repeating myself. Okay, so that for me is just really being an advocate for yourself in terms of getting everything organized, writing out the story, making sure that you step away from it and come back to it, and you can have all the details there, because every detail is important. And a lot of people, at least that I saw when I was a health coach in a functional medicine doctor's office, and a lot of times I would see people be so overwhelmed in the moment that they almost couldn't represent and tell the story accurately, because just going to the doctor is anxiety producing these days, especially if you have chronic illness. So for me, setting yourself up for success means, you have all of your records in one place. You have the narrative from start to finish, and that you spend really ample time refining it so that you make sure there's nothing missed, because your doctor is 50% of the equation and you are 50%, but you're 100% responsible for making sure that your story is accurately told so that there's nothing that goes unmissed, and for how you take care of yourself.
This next one really resonates with me, because it can take it can take a minute, but your next step is to set up your A team. And tell us a little bit about your process of getting your A team together.
So for me and for many other people that I see and speak to, um, dealing with a health crisis and dealing with a flare up specifically where you're, let's say your symptoms are flaring up or you're not feeling well all of a sudden, who wants to jump out of a plane without a parachute? Literally no one. So the important thing for an A team is to set up your parachute. So for me, at that moment when I wrote Kicking Sick, it was my endocrinologist, my integrated medicine specialist. I love acupuncture. I love chiropractic work. I wanted to make sure that I had the best people in place for me. And what works for me is different from what works for you. You know, a lot of times people go to certain doctors because, let's say, they're quote unquote the best specialist. Just because they're the best specialist does not mean they're the best specialist for you. And I have needs that are different than yours. And really, the key is really getting in touch with what it is that you need from a doctor, because that's different from everybody else. And in order to relax into their care, you need to, I'm going off script. I'm skipping ahead to a couple different
That's
ones, but
okay.
okay, coming back to the A team, it's really important that you have your like top tier people in place so that you can focus on healing and making yourself feel better instead of managing your care without a parachute in
That's right.
place.
And some of your doctors, you know, you may see in the beginning several times a year, and then they fall away. And then the other people on your A team may come in, and it's kind of like a constant rotation, but
Mm-hmm.
it's of all the people that understand you and what you're going through, and through many disciplines in the health industry. In other words, like you mentioned, a chiropractor, an integrative specialist, and a Western allopathic doctor. Okay, so the next one is clean house. Tell us what you mean.
So for me, what that means is a lot of times when people are going through a health challenge, they're, like I said, throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what would stick. And you literally try so many things that you don't even know what's doing what anymore because you're literally on 15 different things and one of them may be helping. That's literally how we feel, right?
Amen.
So, so for me, specifically me, and I've seen it in a lot of my clients, the goal is to try to pare things back and try one or two things at a time so that you know what it's actually doing and what's helping you. Otherwise, you're just, I mean, if you could have seen the amount of droppers and supplement bottles and everything I was doing at once, I literally had no idea what was doing what.
Mhm.
So, cleaning house for me really means what what you can do in terms of like dialing it back and how it makes you feel.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And I also think about, I think when I stopped trying to chase the killing off of the bug inside my blood and those numbers and chasing and chasing and chasing, and just really, like you said, cleaned house and then focused more on just like symptom by symptom. Okay, let's start out with, just starting out with ruling out different other things like parasites, mold, illness, blah blah blah. And then once you get down to your Lyme, really taking it one step at a time and baby steps.
Yeah,
Um,
I really feel like the one step at a time is really important because then you can really be in the driver's seat for yourself and say, okay, this is definitely helping me or this isn't.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when you throw the kitchen sink at something, you can make things worse. And you
Exactly.
don't even realize that certain things that you may not even realize are too much for your system at the time. Okay, practicing self-care. We hear a lot about self-care, and I think everybody kind of takes it for granted. But for the Lyme warrior, what does that look like?
Well, for Lyme warriors, self-care is healthcare. And as I've said before, and we've talked about, a lot of times you're managing your healthcare case instead of healing from whatever is ailing you, because you have to take it all into your own hands. So one of the things that I think is so important is that you find what makes you feel good and you put it into your day. So it's almost like these fundamental rituals that you have throughout the day that make you feel relaxed and at ease and, happy. Like for me, I really love an Epsom salt bath, and I'm talking like throw a big bag in the bathtub. I love it. And I try to get that in as much as I can during a week because it's something that makes me happy. Another thing is taking a walk in nature, being preventative, but just being outside and getting out of my head is really, really good for me. But it could be anything from, essential oils to sitting in a sauna for 20 minutes or as long as you can manage. But it's really the thing that makes you feel good. And we should be leaning into that as much of our healthcare plan as the medicine is. This is another umbrella that is really important that we pay attention to.
Absolutely. I think when even just to sit outside, if you can barely get out of bed, but if you can sit outside and take in your vitamin D for 20 minutes and really be reminded that the world is still good. It's still beautiful despite everything that's going on inside your body. Life is still good, and you will heal, but to take a time out from the rumination and the ruminating thoughts of the fact that you're sick.
Mhm.
Okay, take care of home base, your temple, your body. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, we live in a culture that is so focused on processed foods and sugar and literally what is referred to as the sad diet amply. Like aptly, it's the sad diet because it's sad and it doesn't set our bodies up to thrive at all. When I first learned how much better I could feel from eating fresh whole foods and taking out gluten and dairy and all the inflammatory foods, it changed my whole life. It changed all of the pain that I had felt originally as a child. It made me feel a different kind of vitality that I had ever felt before. And part of it is that being sick makes you feel extremely out of control, and especially very out of control within your own body. But feeding yourself as if your body's your temple is one of the best ways that you can nourish yourself and take care of yourself and be in control of the choices that you're making.
I think
And
a
so
lot.
yeah, go
Go
on.
ahead. Finish.
I don't even know what I was saying.
Sorry. Well, I was just going to
It
jump
wasn't
in
important.
and say, a lot of times if I can feel a flare, as you call them, or an episode coming on, or I've been under an extreme amount of stress, or even people will ask me, what's the quickest thing I can do to help my symptoms? It is by and large my number one go-to, which is if you really want to turn something around in like 24 to 48 hours, clean up the diet and just get back to the basics and have one or two items in your meal plan instead of throwing on dressings and gravy and sauce and all of the above. Just clean it up. Be very mindful of what you're eating, and that can a lot of times be enough to steer you out of an episode. You'll have to do other things, of course, but it's really important to keep that in mind, because food was one of my hardest things to realize was playing a huge part in my healing journey. Okay, get moving. I think we know what that means, but let's talk about the importance of that with Lyme disease.
So move it or lose it. It's a phrase that people use. But what is really important is a lot of people with Lyme, and again, I wrote this before I knew that I had Lyme disease, have circulatory problems. And for me, that's certainly true, where I feel I need a lot of support getting my circulation moving. And, I'll feel freezing in my hands and my feet. So what I learned is that the more I move, the better I feel, even if I'm having a horrible day. And there are days, as you know, where you can't get out of bed. And that's all you can do for the day. But on the days where you do feel a little more energized, taking a walk, jumping on a rebounder, doing, I think that movement is so important. And we are in a pretty sedentary lifestyle with the way that desks and offices are set up. But the more that you can do to keep it moving is helpful, not only physically, but there are scientific studies that show that regular vigorous exercise is more helpful than taking a Xanax.
There you go.
Yeah.
And
So
and
that's all I need to hear.
yeah, and for those of you that are in bed that can't even imagine, I remember I couldn't even make it around the block that I live on. And I mean, to hear exercise or movement or jumping up and down, was overwhelming to me. But there are simple, even stretches and breath work that you can do from bed to even increase your heart rate, to increase, even some people even break a sweat through breath work. So I encourage everybody to continue to move in some way, even if you're in bed.
Yes, stretching is amazing. If that's all that you can do in a day, that's so much better than nothing.
Yeah. Expand your resources.
For me, that was at the time that I wrote this, it was really about not just going to the doctor, but trying to do things that are, let's say, more alternative, which now I really don't think that they are. But when I wrote this book, they certainly were. But for me, like I said before, acupuncture is something that really makes me feel so much better. I love cupping for helping my circulatory issues. And it's very, very relaxing for me. So that was something I tried. And in terms of other things that I like saved up and tried different treatments, like a lymphatic massage, which for some people that helps and for some people it doesn't. But really finding the places I could go that would help my body detoxify through my Lyme treatments have been so key, almost as key as the treatment itself. But just finding the people that are like the wellness angels out there that can help your body really function and thrive is so important in healing from Lyme, just as going to the doctor is.
Great. Connecting with your higher self. And this is one that I really believe in as well. And it's very difficult for people who are in 24 pain to hear, connect with your higher self. But let's talk about why that's an important piece of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm. For me, I went to Quaker school for high school and middle school, and we had something called Meeting for Worship. And I'm not Quaker, but I really, really value and believe in their philosophy and way of being. And I didn't know at the time, but by sitting in this meeting every week, I was meditating. And I came to really miss it after I graduated high school. And I didn't come back to it until later when I was in the midst of my health crisis. But I really started to say, like, why I'm in so much pain. I can't get out of bed. What is the message here? Like, how I can't do this alone. And like we've talked about it, it's very dark and isolating, and it can be extremely, extremely lonely. But I found that when you give it up to a higher power, and that could be literally anything you believe in, that could be God, it could be the universe, it could it could be anything you believe in, and just ask for help, ask for guidance, ask for clarity. And for me, I meditate twice a day. Now, let me just say that when I first started, the emotional pain of being sick was so much to bear that I wanted to army crawl out the door from the teacher and never be seen again. But I stuck with it, and it allowed me to filter a lot of the stress that I was feeling emotionally through just sitting and being present with myself and realizing that your body is a gift no matter what stage that you're at, and we're so lucky to be here. And this is a really, really hard moment, and it's horrible, and I would never wish it on anyone, but that is a way that I helped myself through a pretty dark time. That's not just physical, it's emotional, it's mental, it's spiritual. It's a full crisis when you feel that sick. So
right. And taking, it's an attack and an assault on your central nervous system. So being able to, it's not woo woo, you know, I'm not out here in LA saying to meditate, but it, when your central nervous system is attacked, your Lyme disease can get better, but you are left with the aftermath of just this onslaught of chaos going on inside your body, and your system is completely dysregulated. So learning how to brain retrain, breath work, meditation, like you said, even though it sounds like a throwaway piece of advice, it is actually probably one of the things that enabled me to fully heal. And not everybody has exercised this muscle in their life. It's very new for some people to go there. And
can
I
you share
understand
more
that
about
too.
that? Can you share more about that? Why you think that's one of the main things that has helped you?
Hmm. Well, I used to help facilitate personal growth seminars back in the day. And I learned early on that in order to get through emotional baggage, you have to really go and feel it, and you need to really tap into that higher power. So it's been a foundation of my belief. And then when I was, when Lyme disease attacked my body, I was in my head for the first few years. I just was obsessed. I'm a type A personality. I was like, this is not right. I'm in my 40s. I used to spin class every day. And what's wrong with me? I can't even walk now. So I was really relentless in my pursuit of finding out medical answers. But once I surrendered to uh, just reclaiming my sacred space and my central nervous system and my fight or flight, which was impacting my immune system.
Mhm.
So I had no choice but to really one day just kind of release all of the control that I had over it and come back to my fundamental basics, which is tuning into that higher self, that higher power, and understanding for whatever reason, it's not only in my life, but I will be a better person on the other side of it. And
$100%.
that's just my basic belief. And even when you said you wrote the book and you were still going through a lot of your journey, I started the Tick Chicks, and my first little photo shoot, I didn't even wash my hair. I just rolled out. I put on a dress. I went, I did it, but I was still really having some episodes. Um, and I got so much more out of pouring positive thoughts into myself than I could have, there's my phone, than I could have ever gotten, just trying to handle it on my own. I can't do things on my own. This takes a higher power.
I couldn't have said it better. And I love how you said reclaim your space, because that's such a good reminder for people.
I think when you go through Lyme disease, you feel really ripped off. and you feel as though, I often ask people in my classes, do you feel that your healing is out there? Do you think that if you get to the right doctor and, the right medicine, that that is the key to your healing? Because that might be something that your parents taught you or some belief that you were raised, as opposed to saying my healing is right here. My intuition will lead me to all the right doctors. My intuition will, so it's so layered. Healing is so layered. And I I even when I did my retreat, my losing Lyme retreat, I had, during one session, I was like, it's optional, but of course everybody stayed. But I said, we're all going to get down on the floor and I'm going to turn out the lights and we're going to start taking ourselves back into really telling ourselves, I am safe, I am capable, and I am strong enough to overcome this. And we did a real powerful 40-minute
Mm.
just guided visualization. And it's important to cry those tears sometimes and get it out and realize your true self again. Anyway, where I we could be, I everybody knows I could be on here for 2 hours. Okay. Create a tribe that you love. I think we don't we oftentimes look to our family to be that tribe, but mostly what we realize is you may connect with somebody on social media even more so that is going through the same thing that you are.
100%. I mean, two of my closest friends in the world, one has had Lyme disease, and we met at a Lyme gala for Project Lyme.
Uh-huh.
And my other friend had struggled with arthritis since she was a kid. But when you really meet somebody in the depth of their struggle who has been through something similar to you, there's a very, very deep connection that you have immediately. It cuts through all of the noise. I think we had that when we just met like half hour ago.
Instant friends, instant.
Yeah,
I know you will be.
but the for me, I was 25. I was struggling so much to just stay afloat. And a lot of the people that I thought were my friends disappeared. And Lyme and any kind of chronic invisible health challenge that's acute is um, it's very telling. The people in your life that want to support you and can support you and make it about you will show up, and the rest will just trickle away. And that can be a very painful moment, especially if you're someone who had, let's say, a ton of friends. But it's also a very valuable lesson, because if you can sit through the discomfort of the loss of who you thought was in your life, it allows space for the people that really fulfill you and give you energy and don't drain it. And if you can just stick with it, these little angel friends will appear along the way that you feel so connected to. And community, especially through such an isolating experience, is so, so, so important, that you feel seen and validated and heard, and that you can giggle and just like totally be yourself with, no matter where you are. A
Yeah.
lot of times, as young people with chronic health challenges, and really anybody, but specifically for me at that age, I would find myself not sharing because it either didn't feel safe or I didn't want to burden anybody. But the best thing about finding people that you really deeply connect with is that you can be totally your authentic self with them, no matter if you just need to have a cry, or you just want to go do something and laugh and take your mind off of something. Like, you have a person that can really step up for you in all of those ways.
I love it. And, quite frankly, if you can't find a support group, well, there's so many Lyme disease support groups. So I would encourage everybody out there to find a support group. And also, if you live in a community and you think that it's an endemic area and a lot of people are going through it, start your own support group or start a support group online. You'll find your people, and it really
Yeah.
takes the burden off family members as well. You know, they can't really fix it for you, and they don't really maybe understand. And so by creating your own tribe and friend group, I think that it alleviates some of those expectations from our.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have two things that I want to say. One is that when I went to the Lyme Gala I just mentioned, it was such a powerful experience for me because it was the first time that I was in a room with thousands of people that were exactly like me. And it was the most myself I've ever felt. And it was a room full of strangers.
Mm. I know it's an instant connection. It's very hard to describe, but I had that at the retreat too. People became best friends. They had just met, but even by sharing experiences and by being in the room, in and of itself was a huge, huge step for a lot of people. I love
Yeah.
that.
I
Um,
wanted to tell you that you said something on your social media last week that really, it made me really cry. Like I was sitting there watching you and I just had such a resonant experience. And you were talking about connections with and what support looks like from family and friends and how to navigate through that. And I just thought the advice that you shared was so beautiful and so true. And how to, ask for what you need is so, so, so important. And I just loved it. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Yeah. Expectations from others. That's a really tricky one, and having boundaries. I know you say in your book somewhere that, you know, if you really want to heal, the word no will be like your best friend. and, and, and that goes for relationships too. So anyway, I want
Kris Carr says if it's not a hell yes, it's a heck no.
to, right. Being your own best friend and also sharing the glow. Let's talk about those last two because I know we're running low on time, but I think they
No.
kind of go together in a way too.
Yeah. So your body literally hears everything that you say to it. And for a long time, I wasn't very nice to myself. And I would just not understand why my body was turning against me or not understand why it was taking so long or the treatment wasn't working. And I was literally filling myself with all of these negative thoughts because I was so frustrated. Little did I know I didn't have the right diagnosis. But I think speaking to yourself in a positive way and being affirming to yourself every day is so important. Even just to say, today I'm going to feel healthier and stronger than I did yesterday, or I
Mhm.
am strong enough to get through anything that's thrown my way. Um, Things like that, I think, are really, really important. And for me, I had to really retrain myself to be nicer to myself.
Yeah.
And it goes a really long way. Share the glow. um, yeah, they do go together. So what I meant by that is just what are you what where is there a glimmer of hope or goodness in whatever you're going through right now? What is actually something that you're looking forward to? So for me, the experience is not something I'd wish on anyone, but the depth that I found within myself and that I've seen my clients find within themselves from having gone through such an adverse experience and such a challenging experience, I would have never tapped into if this hadn't have happened. And so there are parts of having gone through Lyme that have really challenged me to step up for myself in ways that I never, ever, ever would have, and create space for myself. And, like it's, what we talked about today was about how you need an A team and to focus on your diet and stress reduction and detox and all of these things. But at the end of the day, you're 100% responsible for how you take care of yourself. And that is a relationship that, if you allow it to be through this dark time, can be so rewarding to take care of yourself wisely and well and to listen to your body. We live in such a time when everything's on social media and everything's distracting from your time with yourself. But for me, I think that was the most healing part and a positive part of having gone through so much adversity.
I think that is the perfect note to end our conversation. It's just, I know that everybody out there is getting so much out of this, and I thank you so much. Amy Kurtz, the book is called Kicking Sick. I can't wait to hear what's next on your agenda. And I can't wait to, maybe we should even do a part 2 to this and get into some more stuff on a deeper level. But thank you so much for being here on Lyme Time, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.